Would you like to know what are the best surveillance cameras for private investigators? Well, if so, then this video is for you. Welcome to the PI Guy, tips, tricks, and advice for professional private investigators just like you. My name is John Morris. I am a licensed professional private investigator in Colorado. Now, when conducting surveillance, the most important piece of equipment you will ever need is your camera, or more likely, your cameras. Yes, you will most likely need more than one camera, but don't worry, you don't have to break the bank and go out and spend thousands of dollars right away on a bunch of video equipment. When I started out as a private investigator way back in 2008, I had one camera. That was it, just one camera. Back then, cell phones had no cameras or very poor cameras. I was out there with an old Motorola flip phone with no camera, no internet, no apps. I used my phone to make phone calls. Texting was a possibility, sort of, but you had to do that old 3 letters per button, and it was really like 6 letters per button because there was caps and there was numbers and there was all the special characters in there too. So texting was a huge challenge to get more than 1 or 2 words out. But I digress. Sorry. I had one camera, a Sony camera, like this one right over here. Now, first, I want you to know, I am not trying to sell you on any equipment. I don't have any special brands. I'm not pushing anything. I'm just going to cover some of the equipment that I have used or I currently use and the features of those cameras, as well as features that you want to have in your surveillance camera. So I started out with a camera like this. The first thing you might notice is the size. The camera recorded on an 8mm DAT tape. Yes, a tape like this one. And you know what? It worked excellent for me at the time. Obviously and thankfully, technology has evolved over the years, and today's cameras are much more compact and easier to use. With these old 8mm DAT cameras, you had to play the video back through a device like this onto your computer while it was running video capture software. So if you had 2 hours of video, you had to sit and play back that 2 hours of video at real time speed. So it took 2 hours to capture that video from the beginning to the end off of the camera. If you were lucky. If there were any glitches, then you had to start all over again. Now, as archaic as that may sound, you know what? It was state-of-the-art back then, and it worked perfectly fine for me. In fact, if push came to shove and I had to go out today with the same equipment, I don't think it would hinder my surveillance at all. Obviously, the quality of the video would be substandard compared to today's modern technology, and the time to process the video would be increased, to be sure, compared to the equipment that I use today. What I really want you to understand is that it is not as much what type of camera you have, more than how you use that camera that's most important. I could use one of these, or I could use one of these, which is my current camera of choice, and I can basically do the same job. Now, I would not recommend going out and getting an 8mm DAT camera for surveillance today. In fact, in just a second, I'm going to tell you what you need to look for in a good primary surveillance camera. First, please go down, hit that thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button to show your support for the PI Guy channel. When looking for a good surveillance camera, you need to keep these things in mind. First is your budget. This is a business after all, folks. As I said before, there is no need to break the bank on this purchase. When I started, I always went to eBay and I got used like new or used very good condition cameras to get me started. Now, as far as the specifications for your camera, you want to consider these features. Color is always important to me. People are going to notice that hot pink camera that you have in your hands. Just trust me on this one. My preference is always black or dark blue. This helps the camera not be as visible inside your vehicle. There is, however, that bright chrome ring on most cameras at the lens end. I use some black tape on that ring to help hide it. Just make sure that it doesn't stick out in front of the camera lens. I have tried black magic marker, and that does work, but it does wear off easily. Next is the optical zoom that the camera has. Now, you will see all kinds of cameras out there that are advertising 500x, 1000x, 2000x zoom, and even higher. These huge numbers are digital zoom. Generally speaking, you never want to use digital zoom. It degrades the quality of the video considerably, and it is, a digital reproduction of what the camera actually sees. I would recommend to have 40x optical zoom, at the very minimum 30x optical zoom. The camera I mainly use, the Panasonic HCV180, has 50x optical zoom, 500x digital zoom, and this really cool feature called 90x intelligent zoom. I usually leave it on the 90x intelligent zoom, which I can tell no difference from optical zoom at all, except I get more zoom. But to be honest, the 50x optical zoom is more than enough in most cases. Next, you want to consider the media type in which the video is saved onto on the camera. As I stated before, 8mm DAT should probably not be used today. Most cameras have either a solid state module or a solid state drive, or sometimes an actual physical drive built into them, or some use an SD card or a micro SD card. Now, the biggest concern for the media type is going to be the amount of storage. My Panasonic has an SD card in it, which is really nice. If you're running out of memory, you can just pop in a new card and keep going. I have a 64GB card in there, and I film at 1080p and have never ran out of space, and I have gone over 6 hours of video in one day too. But I do carry a spare card just in case. I also make sure I pull my video every day after my surveillance so I can clear up that space and ensure that I have a good copy of the valuable evidence that I have on video. One downside to SD cards is the time to boot for the camera. If your camera has built-in memory, many times you can just flip that screen open and it's almost instantaneous. You can hit that record button and you can just start recording right away. With SD cards, there's a little bit of pause for a few seconds, which can seem like an eternity when you need to get video or activity very quickly. Now, my simple workaround for this is that I always keep my camera plugged into a power source with the screen always open. If it's plugged in, it never shuts off. My camera can charge with AC or USB, so that is really nice too. And I always have an extra power source besides my car's battery to run my cameras and other accessories. Next item to look at is the video quality your camera can obtain. Now, we're going to get a little bit technical here. Just hang on with me. I shoot everything in 1080p 60 frames per second. When it comes to surveillance video, I see little to no difference between 1080p 60 and 4K except for the size of the video file. Keep in mind, even 1080p 60 frames per second files will be quite large. I just got done with a case where I had nearly 2 hours of video of my subject. My files were huge and difficult to get to my customer. In these cases, what I do is either compile the video in 720p 60 frames per second, which is still excellent quality video, half the size of the file, or I'll put them into multiple videos to send to my client. What you really want to keep in mind, folks, this isn't Hollywood production stuff we're doing. 720p 60 frames per second is pretty amazing, especially if it was recorded at 1080p. Okay, I know this is a lot of techno mumbo jumbo. Let me quickly try to explain what all of those numbers mean really quick. First, please go down, hit that thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button. That really helps the channel out a lot. When it comes to video quality, I would not consider anything below 720p, preferred 1080p. If you think of your screen as a bunch of dots with 720p, you will have 1,280 dots, or what we call pixels, going from the left to right across your screen in a line, which is called a row. We will then have 720 rows going up from the bottom to the top. So this equals a little less than 1 million dots or pixels on your screen at any time. But wait, hang on. Now let's look at 1080p. That's 1,920 dots going across in each row and 1,080 rows going up. So there are over 2 million pixels for every picture frame. Pretty big difference there. But what does that P at the end of the 1080p or the 720p stand for? There is 1080p and 1080i as well, 720p and 720i. The P means progressive and the I means interlaced. The simplest way for me to explain this, folks, in my not-so-techno mumbo-jumbo way is like this. In 1080p, you have those 1,080 rows going from the bottom to the top on your screen. In progressive, it scans across from left to right, each row at a time. 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, all the way to the top, and then it comes all the way back down and starts again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, with interlaced 1080, it does the same thing, but it skips every other row. So it will scan across row 1, then row 3, then row 5, and so on until it gets to the top. And then it'll come back down and it'll do row 2, and then row 4, and then row 6. And when it gets to the top, it'll come back and it'll do the odd numbers, and then the even numbers, and then the odd numbers, and then the even numbers. So with interlace, you have less fidelity in any image, and that is what video really is. It's a bunch of images, one after the other. That leads us into the 60 frames per second, FPS. Most cameras, you can choose between 60 FPS or 30 FPS. 60 FPS basically means that there are 60 pictures or frames in every second of the video. 30 FPS means there's 30 frames in every second of video. So when you look at 1 minute of video, it has 60 seconds or 3,600 frames in it for 60 FPS. And where 30 FPS has 1,800 frames in it for every minute, which is still a lot of pictures in there. Both of these factors, as you can tell, make a difference in the video fidelity or the quality as well in the video size. And I really hope that that makes sense to you. I know it can get very overwhelming, but you should just keep in mind the basics. If you get a camera that shoots 1080p 60 FPS, you will have a very good high definition camera. In fact, 720p is also considered HD high definition as well. The big thing you want to do when you get your camera, make sure it is set to shoot in one of these modes, 1080p or 720p. Interlace is not considered HD. In fact, it's actually based on the old tube TV technology, but we don't have time right now to discuss all of that. Okay, before we go into things like megapixels, f-stops, and all of that jazz, please go down, hit that thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button. Show your support for the PI Guy channel. Come on, I know you want to do it. Go ahead. It really does help the channel out a lot. Now, megapixels are going to be related to the still images that the camera can take. Most video cameras can also take still photos. Mine has a little button on top that I can hit, and voila, it takes a picture. In fact, with my camera, I can be shooting video at the same time and then hit that little button, and I can take a still picture. Megapixel or MP calculation is similar to the video resolution calculation. Your camera's lens can usually take much higher resolution photos than video just because of the limits of technology while it's taking video. For instance, my camera takes 10 megapixel photos, but at 1080p, that's really equal to 2 megapixels or 2 MP. So I often will take stills for certain things while I'm shooting my video so I can get even better quality photos for my reports. But this can really increase the size of your report file as well. So you have to weigh out those factors. I would say, generally speaking, anything in the 10 to 12 megapixel or higher range should be fine for most surveillance camera needs. Now, if you're doing auto accident investigations, crime scene investigations, things like that, you're going to want a totally different camera altogether. Another feature you want to make sure that your camera has is low light or nighttime video capability. I'm not talking about something like military grade night vision. It means it does good in low light to near no light situations. My camera is set for automatic to adjust for lighting, and it does a great job in most scenarios. Now, this feature is often called something different. It could be low light, no light, nighttime, low lux, twilight, things like that. Okay, as for all those other things like f-stops, effective pixels, focal length, shutter speed, iris, it really probably doesn't matter, folks. You can learn a lot about those things on YouTube if you want to go out there and you want to search for it. But if you have a video camera that's shooting in 1080p, 60 FPS, you probably have a pretty good surveillance camera. But wait, hang on. There are a few other very important features that you'll want to make sure your camera has. So just hang on a second. Really quick. I know I ask this a lot, but please hit that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to show your support for the PI Guy channel. Now, here are some other features you'll want to look for. Image stabilization is huge. This uses technology to eliminate that shaky hand syndrome we all get once we start shooting video or taking photos and the adrenaline starts pumping. Manual and autofocus is important as well. As a general rule, I leave my camera on autofocus, but I know a lot of PIs that prefer manual. If I need, I can quickly change over to manual on my camera in the field, so I just leave mine on auto most of the time. Recording formats are another big thing to keep in mind. My camera does AV-CHD, Advanced Video Coding High Definition, MP4, and MPEG. These formats are the most popular. I have my camera set for the AV-CHD. Now, when I edit and I compile my video, then I compile to a different format, but I want the raw video to be in as high definition as possible. Battery life is another huge thing to consider. Even if you're like me and you have your camera plugged in all the time while you're out on surveillance, if you need to take it out on foot surveillance or outside of your vehicle, you need to have plenty of battery life and keep a spare charged battery handy at all times. The bottom line, when it comes to picking your surveillance camera, folks, make sure it is a brand name. Panasonic, Nikon, Sony, Fuji are all usually good brands. If it sounds like some cheap Chinese knockoff, folks, it probably is some cheap Chinese knockoff. Also, always do your homework. Get on YouTube, search for that camera, the make and the model. Look at reviews. Go on Google, do the same thing. And always, always, always consider your budget. Used is fine when you get started out. I always recommend to have 2 surveillance cameras in case something bad happens, like you drop your main camera, or it overheats, or it just plain quits working. Have a backup camera just in case. Hey, here are 2 more videos that I made just for you. Please hit that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to show your support for the PI Guy channel. And thanks for watching. PI Guy tips, tricks, and advice for professional private investigators. And remember, folks, remember, remember, folks, stay safe out there.